Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Integrity Systems Company Stand By What You Sell webinar, especially for Victoria. I'm Deanna Lush from Ag Communicators, and I'll be helping out with facilitation for tonight's session. And it is so great to see so many registrations. Tonight is all about helping you to understand the elements of Australia's red meat integrity system and providing you with practical tips so you can stand by what you sell. The webinar is hosted by Integrity Systems Company with support nationally from the peak industry councils, so Sheep Producers Australia, Cattle Council of Australia, and the Goat Industry Council of Australia. In Victoria, we are supported by Agriculture Victoria and also the State Farming Organisation in Victorian Farmers Federation. A few housekeeping items before we get going. So we are running today's session as a webinar. So this does mean that your microphones are muted, but we want to be very interactive and so welcome any questions that you might have as we go through. We have the Q&A function enabled, so if Zoom isn't your platform or you haven't used it before, just move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen and you will see the Q&A button down there. Just click or tap on that one and type your questions in there. We will answer them as we get to the end of each section in the presentation, and then we'll have a general Q&A at the end of the webinar. Now, if we have a significant tech issue where you can't see or hear us anymore, we're just going to close the meeting off and send you a new invite within 10 minutes, and we're going to pick up where we left off, but fingers crossed we'll be all fine for tonight. Now, to introduce who we have on this evening's session. So our presenter is Kathleen Allen. Kathleen is Communications and Evaluation Manager for ISC. She's responsible for the rollout of all comms and stakeholder engagement activities right across the organisation. Kathleen is actually based on a livestock property near Yass. So in addition to her ISC role, she is speaking from practical experience in putting the integrity system into practice on her farm. We also have Damon Holmes, who is ISC's Integrity Program Manager. He is originally from a cattle property in central Victoria, where they've been long-term suppliers direct to Woolworths, and he's now based in Sydney working with ISC on these programs. We've also got Emily Duncanson on the line tonight, and she is ENVD Product Manager based in Ipswich, Queensland. And also on tonight's call, we have CEO of Integrity Systems Company, Dr. Jane Weatherly, joining us too. Now from Victoria, we have Ben Fahey, who is Manager of Livestock Traceability at Agriculture Victoria, as well as the VFF policy team. So in Leonard Valance, who's the Livestock President and Policy Manager for the Livestock section, Jacinta Pretty. Now this session is going to be recorded and we will circulate the link in an email to you in the next 24 hours, along with some resources just to help to guide you in your use of the Integrity Systems programs. So keep an eye out for that one. We also have a short evaluation link, which will be available at the end of the presentation. Now that will be down in the chat box down at the bottom of the screen as well. We just want to get your feedback just so we can understand that this type of session and this way of receiving updates is useful to you. So on that note, I will hand over to Kathleen to get the presentation started.
Thank you very much, Deanna, and welcome everybody to tonight's webinar. This is pretty exciting. I think we've made it to 600 registrations, so I do hope that we don't break the internet tonight. So, but thank you all for your interest and thank you for joining us, and a big welcome to the Integrity Systems Company team, the team from Ag Communicators, and also our partners at the Department, Agriculture Victoria and the Victorian Farmers Federation. So a quick snapshot of tonight's agenda. We're going to go through the role of the Integrity Systems Company, talk about the importance of the red meat integrity system for Australia. Then we're going to go through in a little bit of detail the two key integrity system programs, so Livestock Production Assurance and the National Livestock Identification System. We'll talk a little bit about the changes to the NVDs, which came in on the 1st of July. We'll introduce you to or give you some practical tips for how you can get on board using the faster and easier ENVD platform. And then we'll show you how you can get all your integrity accounts in one place using MyMLA. So to start off with, let's just have, I guess, a bit of a chat about the Integrity Systems Company. So ISC is actually a fully owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, which is a service provider to the red meat industry. So Meat and Livestock Australia and ISC provide industry services on behalf of all red meat producers. Now in this diagram here, the organisations in the top row, they're known as peak industry councils, and they are focused on policy and strategy. So they do all the advocacy work on behalf of producers to the key decision makers and provide guidance to the service providers such as MLA and Integrity Systems Company. And in particular, the state farming organisations usually have membership of or representatives on those peak industry councils, and that basically is the representative model for livestock producers for the red meat industry in Australia. So all those organisations have separate roles, but all the organisations work together to support the industry to ensure that there is a profitable and sustainable future. So Meat and Livestock Australia is what's known as a research and development corporation. So MLA is responsible for the delivery of research, development and adoption activities and marketing activities. They do that in collaboration with the Australian government and the wider red meat industry, and they do that through investing in initiatives that contribute to producer profitability, sustainability and global competitiveness. And the way that that happens is that MLA invests those levy dollars, so every time sheep, cattle and goats are sold along the supply chain, a levy is paid, so that levy is then matched with Australian government dollars up to a certain point, and those levy funds are then invested by Meat and Livestock Australia under the direction and guidance of those peak industry councils into research, development and adoption and marketing activities. So Integrity Systems Company, as I said, is a wholly owned subsidiary of Meat and Livestock Australia, and at Integrity Systems Company we manage and deliver the Australia's red meat integrity system. This system underpins consumer confidence in on-farm production of Australian red meat and covers both the on-farm assurance elements through the Livestock Production Assurance Program, or LPA, and then identification and traceability through the National Livestock Identification System. ISC works collaboratively with government and industry to deliver these world-leading traceability and assurance programs, and these are the foundations of the Australian red meat integrity system. So the red meat integrity system, basically it ensures that Australian red meat is safe to eat and fully traceable. It is a system of, or provides elements of on-farm assurance and animal identification and traceability from paddock to plate. And basically it underpins the livestock selling system in Australia. It gives confidence to buyers, retailers and consumers. And the identification and traceability elements are part of the National Livestock Identification System there, and then the on-farm assurance component of the program is the Livestock Production Assurance. And both those programs are connected. Oops, just go back. So just to put all of this into context as to why it's really important that we have a red meat integrity system. The red meat industry in Australia is currently valued at $28 billion. It employs 400,000 people across 80,000 businesses and delivers product through red meat to 100 markets globally. So it's a very large, it's an important industry to the Australian economy. We're a serious industry, and we as livestock producers need to take our part in that industry seriously. There are thousands of people who depend on our industry for their livelihood, but there are equally people that depend on our industry for their food security and their protein requirements, both here in Australia and also all around the world. And the confidence that consumers have in our product is based on that traceability through the supply chain, which provides accountability right back to the farm where the animal was raised, and production to an assessed standard. So as a first world country, we take it for granted that our food is produced safely and ethically, and this is not the case in every country around the world. And when you are selling food to international markets, and the majority of our red meat certainly does go overseas. More than 95% of all mutton from Australia is exported, and over 50% of all sheep meat is also exported. So in these situations, it's really important that transparent, rigorous production systems that require audited record keeping on farm are essential. And one thing it's always useful to remember is that even as livestock producers, it's very important that you always have in the back of the mind that as livestock producers, we are absolutely part of the food chain, and we are also food producers. And international buyers require this strong integrity system to be in place. Now, we've got some examples up there on the slide where overseas there have been issues such as mad cow disease or foot and mouth disease, African swine fever, and it's these sorts of risks to our farms and our consumers that we want to avoid. And these just highlight why the integrity system is so important, because it protects the industry prosperity, the market access that we enjoy, and our competitive advantage. And that's linked to our reputation as Australian livestock producers and producers of Australian red meat for providing safe, high quality and premium quality food. It supports the premium prices and the positive overseas perceptions of our product, and it ensures that Australia's reputation as a supplier of clean, green and ethically produced product is maintained. And whilst absolutely there are multiple producers and many properties across Australia, and they vary in size and numbers of livestock produced, the integrity system really is about delivering one measure of quality through one integrity system. And as I said, we all have a role to play to protect that reputation, and we all need to stand by what we sell. So I realise that on the call tonight we've got varying levels of experience. So just as a quick refresher, we'll provide a bit more detail on the two programs which work together to underpin our industry's food safety and traceability on farm. So the first one is livestock production assurance, and it's all about on-farm assurance, covering on-farm management of food safety, animal welfare and biosecurity risks. This is the tick of assurance for your product from producer right through to consumer. And it demonstrates the professionalism of the entire industry and underpins that market access for Australian red meat. The National Livestock Identification System is all about identification and traceability. It tracks the location of every animal throughout its life. It's mandatory for producers and endorsed by major producer feedlots, agents, sale yards and processor bodies, and it's underpinned by state and territory legislation and enhances Australia's ability to track livestock during exotic diseases and also food safety incidents, such as chemical residue violations and the like. Now, there are three other elements which are critical to the integrity system. So we've got the two programs which are based around on-farm assurance and identification and traceability. The three other elements are the Property Identification Code, the Livestock Production Assurance National Vendor Declaration, and then the record keeping that goes alongside the LPA and the NLAS programs. Now, PICs in particular are the central component of the two programs, so that's the Property Identification Code, and these are required for registration with both the LPA and the NLIS. Now, PICs are managed independently by the state departments of agriculture in each state, and incorporation of those PICs into the LPA and NLIS is the only way that traceability and food safety can be managed at a national level. And for an industry that exports a very high proportion of its product overseas, the assurance of a strong and effective national system is paramount. So this is where having those relationships with the state departments and the compliance and the regulatory role of the individual state departments, including establishing and setting those property identification codes, is really important that we have national programs, because at the end of the day, our consumers and our customers overseas don't necessarily care what state a product comes from. It's all brand Australia, so it's really important that we work together as part of a national program. So what does LPA mean on farm? LPA accredited producers commit to carrying out on-farm practices that support the integrity of the entire system. And this is verified when producers sign their LPA NVDs for livestock movements, and there are 7 standards or 7 elements to the Livestock Production Assurance Program, and they are property risk assessment, safe and responsible animal treatments, stock foods, fodder crops, grain and pasture treatments, preparation for dispatch of livestock, livestock transactions and movements, biosecurity and animal welfare. So similarly, the other core program that makes up the red meat integrity system is the National Livestock Identification System. So what actually does that mean on farm? So the NLIS actually combines 3 elements that enable lifetime traceability of animals. So all livestock are identified by a visual or an electronic ear tag or device. all physical locations, so that's the animal identification, then all physical locations are identified by means of a property identification code or a PIC, and then all livestock location data and movements are recorded in a central database, and that's known as the NLIS database. And then I guess the other enabler that brings those two programs together, and is the one that we probably have the most visualisation around, is the National Vendor Declaration. And it's the National Vendor Dec that brings together all those on-farm assurance and the identification and traceability elements, and it's the basis for ensuring a safe and traceable food product. So the NVD captures the food safety information on every animal through its history, every time it moves from property to processors or to sale yards. And the NVDs also provide evidence of the livestock history and any on-farm practices when transferring livestock through the value chain. And you can only stand by what you sell by ensuring that every NVD that you fill out is complete, clear and correct. So as I said right at the start, we'd introduce you to a couple of the changes that are occurring in 2020, and hopefully you will have heard about these over the last couple of months. But there are a suite of changes to the NVD this year. So basically a review of all current NVD versions by SafeMeat in 2019 recommended that a number of changes be made, resulting in the development of updated versions of all 5 LPA NVDs. Now, these changes collectively will provide an easier, more efficient and cost-effective system for producers and supply chain stakeholders and enable them to better interact with the integrity system. And this suite of changes aligns with the goal of ensuring that the integrity system of the future is simpler to use, it's valued by industry and trusted by consumers. And those 3 changes can be summarised there as I'll also talk about them individually, but there's a new ENVD system as well as the decommissioning of the current EDEC system. So new versions of the LPA NVDs for all species became available on the 1st of July, and they're identified by version number 0720. Previous versions of NVDs will continue to be accepted until the 31st of December this year. And then from the 1st of January 2021, only the updated versions of all NVDs will be accepted for all species. And just an important point to note here that under MLA's Accelerated Adoption Initiative, there's currently no cost for NVD books until the 1st of July 2021. So what's changed on the NVDs? Well, something of particular relevance to producers in Victoria is that on the sheep NVD, there is now the inclusion of the number of electronic devices in the consignment on the NVD form. So this obviously has been in place on the cattle form for a long period of time, following the establishment of the NLIS and the need for individual identification on cattle. However, now this caters for the mandatory use of EID in Victoria and increasing use in other states, particularly with seed stock producers. The other change is the inclusion of a destination PIC on the NVD. Now, this is actually mandatory in Western Australia and Tasmania, but it's optional for other states. But we would certainly encourage you to fill out that destination PIC as much as possible. It certainly helps when it comes to doing your transfers on the NLIS database and also enhances the lifetime traceability throughout the life of an animal. And throughout tonight's webinar, you will see these little integrity insights pop up from time to time. So question that we get quite a bit is, how do you actually find out the destination PIC? Well, there's a couple of ways that you can do that, and that's asking your agent or your buyer before you're loading sheep and cattle, for example, at your yards. You can search it in the NLIS database, or if you're using the ENVD, the search function is quite sophisticated and easy to use as well. Then the other change on the NVDs is removal of Part C, which is the agent's declaration section. So that's no longer on the NVD. And just a little tip there, if you would like to order new copies of the NVD, you can do that through the LPA Service Centre or access it through the Integrity Systems Company website, or you can call or email the ISC help desk. As I said earlier, the EDEC is actually being decommissioned over the remainder of 2020. And basically what this means is that from the 30th of April this year, no further tokens were able to be purchased. Between the 30th of April and the 31st of December, any tokens that previously have been purchased can still be used, but then as of the 31st of December this year, access to the EDEC platform will cease. Now, just a note there is that the new ENVD covers all the information that the EDEC does, but it does it in a much more user-friendly way, and it's certainly a lot more intuitive and easier to store, and there's a lot of benefits by moving across to the ENVD, and by running a single digital system will be a significant cost and time saving to the industry.
So Kathleen, I will just take a break there just to remind people that we do have the chat function down the bottom, and we can answer your questions as we go through. All the panelists are online and able to pop some written answers in the Q&A. I would emphasise that we have the ISC Brains Trust on the line tonight. Like, everyone's here and you can get all of your questions answered. So please hop in there, write your questions, and I'll hand over to you, Kathleen, for the next section.
Thanks, Dee. So that's basically a summary of the changes that have been rolled out in the last couple of months. But from now, for the remainder of the webinar, it's all about providing you with some tips and, I guess, a better understanding of what it is in terms of requirements, so that you can actually meet your requirements as part of the Integrity Systems programs. So ISC is working with industry influencers and producers right across Australia at the moment to build awareness, knowledge and skills in the LPA and NLIS requirements. And we absolutely want to help industry to stand by what it sells. And so part of our strategy is to communicate a series of practical tips on how producers can meet their requirements. So we'll go through some of that now. So just to go back where we started tonight, the on-farm assurance and the identification and traceability elements of the red meat integrity system are absolutely all connected, and this little diagram here represents how LPA and NLIS come together, and they come together in three separate areas, and that's around the property identification code, the NVDs, and also through the record keeping. So in terms of LPA, what actually do producers need to do? So there's a couple of key things that producers need to do to make sure that you're meeting your requirements as part of LPA. And they are to keep your online account details up to date, to maintain your LPA accreditation, and this includes doing the online learning and the assessment to understand the LPA's requirements for livestock and property management, and renewing your accreditation every 3 years. Accreditation gives you more options for marketing your livestock, and it certainly means that you can access the LPA NVDs for all livestock movement between picks. You also need to manage your livestock and property in line with the 7 LPA on-farm standards. You need to make sure that you maintain thorough records as evidence of livestock history and on-farm practices, and you need to be prepared to undergo an audit if requested. So LPA is an audited accreditation, so as a livestock producer you agree to complete an audit when asked, and this provides accountability from paddock to plate. From an NLIS point of view, what are the top things that as producers you need to do to make sure that you're meeting your requirements as part of the National Livestock Identification System? Well, you need to keep your online NLIS account details up to date. You need to order and use NLIS tags as identifiers for every animal on your pick. The required tag type differs a bit between the states and territories, but every animal must be tagged with an accredited NLIS device and can't be moved to another pick without one, including to another farm, feedlot, sale yard or processor. You need to record movements of livestock in the NLIS database. So livestock transfers between picks must be recorded by transferring the tags in the NLIS database. The person receiving the livestock is responsible for completing the transfer, and property-to-property transfers in Victoria must be completed within 48 hours of the movement occurring. All producers need to regularly check their own records against the database to ensure that transfers have been completed, and this is really important if you are relying on someone else to make their transfer for you. You need to check that this has actually happened. And it's recommended that you do a pick reconciliation every year to ensure that the NLIS database is an accurate record of the devices and the livestock on your property, and to ensure that lifetime livestock traceability. Sometimes the NLIS database issues automated emails when differences occur or discrepancies occur between movements of animals, and it's important to investigate these differences if you are notified. And producers need to remember that completing livestock transfers on the NLIS database is an auditable requirement of the LPA, and auditors will review NVDs, ENVDs and NLIS transfers. So then we come to the LPA NVDs and what you need to do as a producer to make sure that you're doing the right thing there. You need to maintain your LPA accreditation so that you can continue to access your LPA NVDs. Now, NVDs are a legal document and they are absolutely your declaration that you have met the requirements of the program. And this declaration is married to the livestock lifetime traceability when the transfer is completed on the NLIS database. So that's how the two work together. Assurance and traceability need to go hand in hand so that our customers can remain confident in our integrity system. Excuse me. And when you tick boxes on your LPA NVD, you are declaring that your on-farm practices meet those LPA requirements and therefore our customers' expectations. A tick on an NVD must be backed up by accurate farm records, and this is your pledge that the meat from your farm, the food from your farm and the livestock that you've produced have been produced safely, ethically and meet the biosecurity requirements. And it means that you stand by what it is that you're selling. And you need to file all your completed NVDs in case of an audit, or if you're using the ENVD, they're stored easily for you. And NLIS transfers, again, are part of LPA audits because consumer confidence in the system relies on assurance and traceability being linked. So make sure you complete your NVDs properly and make sure that the NLIS transfer is done on the database, referencing that LPA NVD so that you're doing your part to keep the system strong. So I did say that we would be providing you with some practical tips. So the biggest tip for producers in order to stand by what you sell is to fill in every LPA NVD so that it is clear, correct and complete. Whoops. Sorry about that. Now, there's a whole page of tips in the new LPA NVD booklet on how to fill it out. We're just going to focus on a couple of the key areas tonight where sometimes there is confusion. So this basically is a copy of the inside of the hard copy of the NVD, which has just been released. So lots of different tips there. However, you will start to see this on the, well, it is already available on the ISC website. It's not just in the new hard copy book. And you'll also, as we roll out a number of other communication activities in the coming months, you'll see this on signage in your rural retail outlets and the like. So you'll be able to see these tips quite regularly. But as I said, we'll just focus on a couple of areas tonight. Now, the questions in part A of the NVD are often where producers might need a bit of a hand. So these are the questions that are about the animal's history. Now, this information is crucial for food safety and market access. So the key here is to always stay on the safe side. And if in doubt, tick yes. So a couple of examples here. An increasing number of markets will not accept beef or beef products that are treated with hormonal growth promotants or HGPs. So answering this question, question 1, correctly is vital to protecting Australia's access to those markets. So on the cattle NVD, you must declare if cattle have ever been treated with HGPs in their lifetime. So if in doubt, tick yes, and remember that no cattle for the EU market can be treated with HGPs. And a little tip there, our integrity insight is that from the LPA learning, so don't forget that cattle treated with HGPs must be identified with a triangular ear punch. So if you've purchased cattle that have that ear punch, you'll know that they have been treated with HGPs over their lifetime. Here's a question from the sheep NVD, about, and it's important that you check your records for question about the scabby mouth vaccination. In terms of question 3, which is the question around have you bred the livestock or have you owned the livestock since their birth? Well, if you bred the livestock, then yes, you tick yes. If you purchased one or more animals, then you tick no, but you indicate the most recent date of purchase if it's a mixed consignment. So what we see here quite commonly is you can't tick yes and no, you can only tick one answer. And similarly, if you've got a mixed consignment, you need to tick the most recent date of purchase. We can't handle NVDs that come in where all 4 of those boxes are ticked. So you need to make sure that you're ticking the box for the most recent date of purchase for the whole consignment. With veterinary and chemical treatments, withholding periods and feed, it's really important that you declare the risk. For all questions, tick yes or no, not both, and go back and check your records to be sure. If you can't be certain of the vaccination status or the treatment withholding periods, then declare the risk and tick yes. Similarly, if you need to check your records to see that all animals in the consignment have not been fed restricted animal material. And restricted animal material, or RAM, includes meat and offal, animal fats, blood, meat, bone, and blood meals. With veterinary or chemical treatments to the actual livestock, you need to check whether the livestock are still within withholding periods or export slaughter intervals. So this relates to question 5 and question 6. And if you need more information, you can check the label of the product that you used, or you can go to the APVMA website and look up their export slaughter interval. And just a note that export slaughter intervals don't necessarily align with the withholding period. Quite often they are actually different. For question 7, which is regarding feed products, so in the past 60 days, of any of the cattle in this particular consignment consumed any material that was still within a withholding period. So again, it's really important that you check your records to see if any livestock have consumed any material that was still within a withholding period. And then the final step for Part A is the declaration. Now, this is your declaration and guarantee that you've met all the LPA requirements and that the NVD is complete and correct, and that the animals have not had access to any restricted animal material. Don't forget that LPA NVDs are a legal document and a part of your LPA record keeping, and so can be audited. And then Part B of the NVD, which is the bit that needs to be completed by the livestock carrier. The reminder here is don't let the truckie leave without filling in this section, because it's really important that you have the signed copy for your copy as well. So make sure that the truck driver signs their copy, signs all copies of the NVD before they leave. And the final tip here on the NVDs, or the point just to reinforce again, is that if you've got mixed consignments, you can divide them into groups based on their history, and then you can do more than one NVD, but only if you can identify and separate them. If you can't identify and separate the animals either on the truck or at the yards or at the processing plant, wherever they're going, then you would need to fill in just one NVD. However, you need to take that really clear risk management approach to filling out the NVD, particularly in relation to the ownership. So it's the most recent date of purchase if you've purchased any of those animals in the consignment, and similarly with the treatments and things like that, you need to make sure that you're taking that really conservative risk management approach, declaring the risk, and if in doubt, tick yes. As I said earlier, I would introduce you, if you haven't already started using, but talk about the ENVD. So the new mobile-friendly, user-centric ENVD has been developed based on feedback that ISC has sought since the ENVD's initial launch in 2017 as an alternative to using paper NVD books. The faster ENVD system is available to all LPA accredited producers, feedlots and value chain stakeholders. It's more accurate than paper forms and ensures that the latest versions of the NVD are being used and meet market requirements. It reduces time and duplication spent completing livestock assurance and health declarations, because if you go in and you tick the required forms that you would like, so if you're after a NVD as well as an animal health statement and an MSA declaration, you could tick the forms that you require, fill out that information only once, and it populates all those forms for you. It reduces the cost of storing and retrieving historical consignments for auditing, reporting and administrative purposes. And this became particularly evident in the recent bushfires, where we had a number of producers that lost all their records. With the ENVD, this is obviously all stored in the cloud, so that's a historical way of keeping your consignments on hand. And you don't need to wait for the new NVD books to arrive. And the other benefit there is that stakeholders in the supply chain can also log in and view consignments, including receivers. So the ENVD is not just an NVD, it's actually a system for completing all your consignment paperwork digitally, including those livestock assurance and health declarations. and you can access the new ENVD system by logging into the LPA Service Centre using your LPA credentials. So you need your LPA, you need your PIC, your user ID and password, and you can start creating consignments from there. So why is this ENVD version better than the previous ones? Well, we've undertaken some very extensive consultation with supply chain stakeholders. It's undergone rigorous testing, including by a number of producers and the feedlot sector. You can print the new ENVD at any time, even if it's incomplete. There's unlimited space for livestock descriptions. The signature and the signing capability on the new NVD is significantly been improved. You no longer need to upload scanned copies of signatures. You can simply draw the signature or a brand using a touchscreen device or your mouse. And a number of new features and enhancements will be routinely released in response to feedback that we're receiving all the time now that the new system has been released. And basically those ongoing ENVD system updates, as I said, being released all the time. There's been several released since the ENVD was launched at the end of March this year, and they include a mixed sex option for sheep, lamb and goat consignments. The save button from the transporter step has been removed. The look and feel of the movement information page has also been improved, and a number of performance issues, including some screen errors that were popping up, have also been resolved. There's lots of things coming up for the ENVD, and as I said, these will be rolled out consistently over coming months, and they include cows and a calf sex option, the ability to delete submitted consignments, as well as some bug fixes. And as I said there, the insight here is that ISC is continuously updating the ENVD to ensure that it meets expectations and requirements. The updates are listed on the ISC website. We also publish some of those notes about the improvements in each month's edition of Integrity Matters, and we absolutely welcome your feedback on the ENVD and your experience, and would encourage you to send us that feedback, good or bad. It's always nice to receive good feedback as well, through to the ENVD team as well. So for the remainder of the session, I thought we'd just really focus on some of those practical tips, so these integrity insights across the different elements of the program, so hopefully to help you meet your requirements as part of the program going forward. So some integrity insights here for the LPA NVD, apart from what we've already touched on, but some tips for filling out the NVDs on the go. So fill out as much as you can before going to the yards, so that you don't have your dog walking around with muddy paws, or you don't drop the book in the yards and you have to start from scratch. Don't get caught short. Make sure that you order your new book early, or alternatively move across to the ENVD platform. Always keep your LPA records up to date, so that the information you need to enter onto the NVD is actually there and ready to go. Always file a copy of the NVD and keep it as a copy as a part of your records. And then absolutely you need to check the NLIS database to ensure that transfers have occurred. From an NLIS point of view and around, I mean, it's always good to make sure that you're checking the database, checking your transfers and doing your PIC reconciliations. Now, if you are new to the NLIS database, or you haven't been doing some of these things and you need some help navigating the database, ISC, we have a series of pretty detailed tech tip files that are available on the NLIS website. But if you stay tuned, we've actually got a big piece of work at the moment to turn a lot of those tech tips into some intuitive how-to guides. Now, another tip there is to check the NLIS database whenever transfers are being completed, to ensure that the numbers are actually correct, because it can save you a lot of time down the track rather than having to fix up mistakes. Now, from a livestock production assurance point of view, I've talked a lot tonight about the need for keeping good records, but it's very easy for you, and it's probably best to make sure that you align your record keeping with the 7 LPA standards. So they are things like the property risk assessment, safe and responsible animal treatments, and ISC has a number of free templates that will make that easy for you. So we've got templates and checklists available on the ISC website. If you simply search for LPA record keeping templates, you'll find them, and these include all the details that must be recorded, so you're not starting from scratch. And also you can order a free printed copy of those as part of the MLA Accelerated Adoption Initiative program, or you can go to the LPA Learning section of the ISC website, but you'll find a number of really good tips there on how to keep your records and some templates so you don't have to start from scratch. Record keeping, we've talked a lot about that. It's really important that you get your record keeping in order. However, there are a number of practical tips to make sure that you've got that information there. And I guess the biggest one is that there is no perfect formula and there is no one-stop shop for record keeping, and that there are a couple of things that you can do to make it a little bit easier for you, particularly with some elements of the record keeping. So an example there, ask your supplier to add the ag chem or the vet product batch number and expiry date to the invoice when you're purchasing your products so that your livestock treatment records are up to date. I'm a big fan of using your iPhone. We're all journalists these days, so start taking some photos. If you're going into paddocks to check paddocks or move sheep, take a photo. Your photo's date stamped. You're always going to have a record of it. You can simply upload that, add it to notes. You don't have to be using the most sophisticated decision support tools, of which there are numbers of available. You could still be using a spreadsheet. You could still be using your paddock book, but absolutely use your phone. Something that I do here on my property whenever I'm drenching sheep or treating sheep, for example, have the sheep in the yards, have the drench drum in front of the yards just on a panel or something, turn it around so you can see the expiry date and the batch number on it. You've got the mob of sheep in the background, ideally something looking at you so you can see the colour of the tag so that you know which mob of sheep it is as well. Take your photo, date stamp, so you've got your date of treatment, you know what you're treated with, you've got your full livestock records there and ready. It's all quite straightforward, and if you just use some of those tools, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And another tip for LPA is when purchasing fodder. Now this has been particularly relevant in the drought, of course, more so with bushfires. If you're purchasing fodder, hay or grain, it's always a good idea to download a copy of the Commodity Vendor Declaration, which is available on the ISC website, and ask the supplier of the product to fill it in. Now, the Commodity Vendor Deck really only provides information about the food safety requirements or the food safety risks, so what any fodder might have been treated with as part of production. It's not necessarily going to help you with things like weed control and things like that, but we absolutely accept that, particularly in bushfire situations with a lot of donated fodder and the like, that this is in a very stressful situation you're not likely to ask for, and a commodity vendor deck is not something that's going to be top of mind, and that's absolutely fine. If you have got fodder coming in that you don't necessarily know the history of, you haven't got a commodity vendor deck, then when it comes to that question on the NVD, you can simply take the risk management approach, declare that you don't understand, that you don't know the risk, and you can apply a 60-day withholding period to that particular product. We quite often get asked about what's involved with an LPA audit. So a couple of tips or some insights in terms of an audit, and we could do a whole webinar on audit. So if that's something that's of interest, then please let us know. But I mean, essentially the key tip is don't panic, that audits are simply about identifying areas for practical on-farm improvement. But your LPA records, including your NLIS transfers and your NVDs or copy of ENVDs, will be reviewed by an auditor. So it's important that you make sure that they're accurate and up to date, and that they will also give you some tips to improve your systems and processes on farm for your record keeping as well. And a little insight there, did you know that you actually need a copy of the Australian Animal Welfare Standards and Guidelines on hand for your LPA audit? So it's a good idea to download it and save it or bookmark it in your favourites. You don't need to print it out. It's a fairly text-heavy sort of a document. But if you download it and save it in your office, make sure that all your team members can have access to it. Then you will have met all your requirements as part of the LPA program from an animal welfare point of view. So in terms of where, I mean, I've touched on a couple of things, but there's plenty of other places where you can get more information. ISC's done a lot in the last 12 months to develop our online and digital communication materials and information resources. So there is now the Integrity Systems website, which is a one-stop shop or your portal for all things integrity. We have a regular monthly email, which is called Integrity Matters. So hopefully you all receive that and have received that over the last couple of months. If you don't, then absolutely absolutely please reach out and we can add you to that subscription list, or you can subscribe on our website. We have all the usual social and digital channels, so we have YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. We absolutely have not put all our eggs in the digital and the online basket. COVID's not helping with the face-to-face activities at the moment, as we all know, but absolutely you will be seeing us at face-to-face events, and certainly an increased presence of hard copy materials through, as I said earlier, through sale yards and also through rural retail outlets and the like. We've got quite a few tools and resources that are available there to help you stand by what you sell and meet your integrity requirements. We've got a number of videos and how-to animations, including some really great ones now to help you complete the NVD, so touching on what I talked about plus more. There's a great animation on how to use the ENVD. There's the LPA learning materials. We've got some really good FAQs. The new website has a really intuitive search function. We've got fact sheets, particularly in relation to responding to natural disasters, so floods, bushfires and drought, and particularly for dealing with still making sure that you meet your requirements if agistment is an issue. And as I said earlier, there's quite a few record keeping templates. If you're really stuck and need some help, we have a great help desk service that you can contact by phone or email as well. And just to finish up before we get to questions, because I'm conscious I'm just about out of time, but I would really encourage you, if you haven't already, to sign up to MyMLA. Now, MyMLA is I guess it's a customised dashboard of personalised information for you, depending on your region, your production system, and the types of markets and things like that that you're interested in. But basically, the real clincher for MyMLA is that it brings all your accounts into one place, and therefore you have single sign-on capability. So when you sign up to MyMLA dashboard, you can link your integrity accounts, and therefore you only need to remember one login and password, because I absolutely know what it's like to try and remember all your user IDs for different integrity accounts, let alone all your other online accounts that you might have. So I'd encourage you to sign up to MyMLA. This is what the platform, the dashboard looks like. If you just go up here to the linked accounts area, as long as you come a little bit prepared with your NLIS credentials and your LPA credentials, you'll be able to quite easily link your accounts, and then from then on you can access all your integrity programs through that link there, and you don't actually have to go in through each individual program. So it's a really great way of signing up. MyMLA also gives you access to tailored weather forecast depending on your location, prices and markets information depending on your farming system, as well as events, industry news and information, and links to various research resources as well. So, Dee, that's it from me. Thank you very much, and now happy to hand over to the team or for questions and discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Virtual round of applause. You packed some information into a pretty tight session there. Good job, everyone. You have been pumping us with questions. I've got like 3 pages. I hardly know where to start. But what I will just draw your attention to is that evaluation survey. We're just going to pop that in the chat. We really want to know whether this is the right format to get information to you. But over to the questions. So we are just going to start with this one. If I buy stock privately through an agent, who does the update on the NLIS database?
So I can probably answer that one. I mean, as a standard, the receiver of the animals is responsible for doing the NLIS transfer. So as a receiver of animals, you should check, but if you've got an arrangement with your agent privately that they might do that for you, then that's okay. But at the end of the day, the accountability lies with you as the receiver of the animal, so you need to check the NLIS database.
Awesome, thank you. How long do we have to keep our NVDs for?
Might actually throw that question to Ben, because this question does come up from state to state, and it might actually differ. So Ben, what actually is the requirement in Victoria?
It's 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Ben, while we've got you, we've got a stash of questions for you here. What documentation does the livestock carrier use to justify ownership when checked by inspectors?
Very good question. So in Victoria, there's no legal requirement for the stock transporter or the person moving the livestock to have a vendor declaration, as long as the vendor declaration is at the point of destination before or at the time the animals arrive. That's what the legal requirement is. So there won't be any inspectors or police operating in Victoria that will ask for a vendor declaration or a waybill if you use the terminology in other states and territories. They may be asked for identification, pick cards if they have them on them, or license, that sort of thing. But in terms of identification or proof of ownership for the livestock, there's no legal requirement for the National Vendor Declaration to accompany those animals. As long as it's there once they arrive at the destination or beforehand, then that's all that's required.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question. Just got a question around picks and shires. So someone's asked, we have 2 properties in different shires and I'm unclear as to how we can, or if we can, link the 2.
Yes, so they can be linked as long as they're in adjoining shires. So if they're shires that are separated by one or more different shires in between them, you can't. But if they're parcels of land that are located either in the same or adjoining shire, then you can link them, and they need to be run as essentially one business. So certainly, if they wanted to contact our helpline, that's the PIC Victorian PIC helpline. Then we would be able to talk them through that. But yes, you can have parcels of land that are in adjoining shires linked under the one PIC.
Okay, great, thank you. So another question. So if I'm sending my stock to a sale yard, do I search for the PIC number of the sale yard, or do I use my stock agent's company? It's not possible to know where the stock are going to end up.
Damo, did you want to answer that one?
Yep, so I think you obviously assigning it, the destination is the sale yard, however you're consigning it to an agent, so your agent pick will be put in the consign to, or the consignee, sorry, and the destination will be the sale yard.
Okay, great, thank you. Emily, on ENVDs, if we use an ENVD, do we need to print it and give a hard copy to a transporter?
Yeah, so at the moment, your transporter is the determining factor. So if they're comfortable signing an electronic copy on a mobile device, then by all means you can keep that consignment digital. If they're not, then we give you the flexibility to be able to print that ENVD at any time. So you can leave that transporter section blank and have them fill it out on a hard copy once you get to the yards. And I guess it's also pertinent to be aware of what the destination is expecting as well in that situation. So just make sure that your whole supply chain, if you're wanting to keep the consignment digital for now, make sure that the whole supply chain is expecting that consignment to be kept digital. Otherwise, obviously, there is the flexibility there to print, and we'll continue to work on how we are delivering ENVD so it makes it easier and easier to keep that consignment online. So there'll be plenty of updates in that area around our offline and online capability and how we're managing those transactions between supply chain participants.
Awesome, thank you. While we're just going on those, can you use both the NVD and ENVD, or do you only have to use one of them, one of the systems?
No, so again, we're giving you the option to use both. I would just urge people to bear in mind that there is a record keeping burden in using both. So if you're using ENVD and you're using paper copies, just remember to keep the copies of your paper. So that in an audit situation, you've got all of your records that can be called upon.
Okay. And could a text copy of an ENVD be sent via SMS to a truck driver or receiver? What's the plans in that space?
Yeah, so as I just sort of touched on, we're doing a lot of work in regards to our offline capability. At the moment, we're not communicating to truck drivers or anyone else in the supply chain via text message, but it's something that we are looking into. Obviously, SMSs are connectivity dependent, so there will be a variety of different solutions that are put in place for this situation where we're trying to transfer the consignment to different participants. So we don't send text messages right now, but we will likely introduce that in the near future.
Great, thank you. Ben, we might just come back to you. I've got a few more state-based ones here. Now, question is, why has the eartag subsidy been significantly reduced?
Yeah, so the eartag subsidy enabled us to have extremely cheap electronic sheep tags available from the rollout of Sheep EID, or mandatory rollout of Sheep EID. And so the initial introduction of that was at a cost neutral amount. So the tags, electronic tags, were the equivalent price of visual tag. And that was done as a phase-in approach to one, build up the numbers, and as I said, slowly phase in the introduction of mandatory EID tags. And so what we've seen is the subsidies reduce, and we've seen the price go up. And so the cheapest price at the moment is 67 cents for electronic analysed sheep tags in Victoria. Still significantly cheaper than where you can get them elsewhere in the country, but yes, the subsidy has been slowly sort of wound back. Still subsidised, but not as much as when we had the initial rollout, 2017, when it was a cost neutral phased-in approach to it.
Okay, great, thank you. And just a bit of local knowledge as well. Does every producer need to purchase a scanner for stock purchases? Are there any other options locally?
No, they don't. There are a number of companies that offer scanning of livestock. Certainly agents do an excellent job. And we see majority of transfers for both cattle and sheep and goats, electronic transfers onto properties being conducted by agents. So certainly discussing with your local agent, a number of them have wands and portable panel readers. You can also discuss with your local Ag Victoria office and see if they have a wand that you may be able to borrow. But no, you don't necessarily have to purchase one. But obviously, as a receiver of the livestock, it is your responsibility to ensure that those animals are transferred onto your pick. And obviously, either you do that through your own scanner or your own wand, or you engage someone else on your behalf to do that. There was another question in there around, do the previous owners of those livestock have to provide you with the RFIDs or the tag details to transfer? If they have them, a number of studs have those numbers and can provide them to you. You can use those numbers to transfer, but ultimately, as I said, it's a requirement for the receiver or subsequent owner to do the transfer, and how they go about doing that. There are a number of different ways to do it.
Great, thank you, Ben. We'll just go back to Damon. We just had a question just to clarify the agent's pick when sending to a sale yard versus the sale yard pick. So back to you, Damon.
Yes, sorry, I'll probably make it more clear. So just you normally think of it as the physical location. So obviously you're going from your farm and the destination is the sale yard, but then you're consigning those animals essentially to the agent itself. So think of it as what the destination is from and to, and then the consignee actually taking carriage of those animals will be the agent themselves. But I'll again put that up on the chat so people can get some clarity on that.
Great, thank you. I'm conscious it's 8:30, so we will look to wrap up shortly. I would just draw your attention to the chat box again to see that little link there. We'd love to get your feedback whether we do this kind of thing more often for you. Just a few closing questions to wrap up. Just note a comment there from someone about making the record keeping templates in another version. I'm sure ISC will take that on board. A question from Helen: from what date would you need to have these records if you're going to be audited? anyone want to have a comment there about the preparation of records for audit?
Yeah, sure, I can. I think from an audit perspective, obviously the minimum for the state jurisdictions is 7 years. So we go through a 3-year cycle. For everyone's information, there's 3,000 audits a year under LPA. So it's obviously a small number. However, if you're keeping them for 7 years as a minimum, you'll obviously maintain that requirement. However, during the audit, the auditor will obviously ask for a sample of NVDs. They're not going to ask for specific ones. And they'll essentially work through your NLIS transfers and try and find a corresponding movement in an NVD form. So it's essentially what you've got on hand and can provide the auditor that you're complying with the program. But I'd stick to what the requirements are for the states.
Okay, thank you. And might just close off with one last question, just a point of clarification here from Jody. If I gist animals, then who updates the NLIS database? Whose responsibility is that one?
Dana, I can answer that if you like. So it's joint responsibility. If you're owning and managing those livestock at the adjustment property, then you would do the transfer. If you're obviously still the owner, but you're adjusting them on a property where someone is managing the day-to-day care and upkeep of those animals and obviously owns the land, then they would have responsibility as well. So under Victorian legislation, it provides responsibility across both people, but I would suggest you have a discussion with whoever you're adjusting the animals with. If they are managing them from a day-to-day basis, then I would discuss with them about doing the transfer. And if they don't do it, then as the ultimate owner of the animals, then you would do that transfer if they didn't or weren't able to do it.
Great, thank you, Ben. Right, well, I'm just going to draw it to a close there. I'm conscious of everyone's time. I would just note that we haven't got to all the questions, but we will send a response to them out in the email. It will be coming from Integrity Systems Company in the next 24 hours. That will include the recording of tonight's session. It will also include some links to other resources and things that will hopefully make life easier for you when it comes to managing within the integrity system on your property. Kathleen, I'll just throw to you if you've got any last final words, comments before we close.
Thanks, Dee. No, just on behalf of Integrity Systems Company, thank you to everybody that's joined us tonight. It's fantastic to see so many people engaged in the integrity system and wanting to find out how it is that you can go about meeting your requirements so that all of us collectively can stand by what we all sell as part of what is a pretty exciting industry to be in. I would like to thank the team from Ag Communicators that have kept us all on track, the rest of the team from Integrity Systems Company, definitely got the A team on the call tonight, and big shout out to Jacinta from VFF and also to Ben from Ag Victoria. So thanks everybody for being part of it, and absolutely if you could give us some feedback, and if you'd like to do more of these, then please let us know.
Great, thank you. All right, so on that note, please click on that link in the chat box and give us your feedback. But otherwise, thank you everyone for your time. Keep an eye out for that email tomorrow, and have a good evening. We're just going to leave the webinar open just for a minute longer so you can grab that link. But thanks for your time. Good night.